All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the time that we are proceed to the next session. This is the second session titled Islamic Trade Finance, Opportunities for Trade and Growth. But before we start, we would like to welcome to everyone to have a seat first, comfortably. Thank you very much. Yes, everyone who are still in the foyer area, please approach to the ballroom and have a seat because we are about to starting the program. This is the second session. Thank you. Everyone is ready. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will start this next program by watching a brief video on the International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, or ITFC. Enjoy.
Whether it's a wheat field in Kazakhstan, a cotton farm in Burkina Faso, a petroleum refinery in Egypt, you'll see ITFC part of the picture. Facilitating trade to improve the livelihoods of people across the world. Promoting intra-trade among member countries to enable economic growth and prosperity. Partnering with countries and governments to mobilize resources to achieve an impact on trade and development. Helping businesses to become part of the world trade. We are ITFC. We are advancing trade, improving lives. We are pioneers in Islamic trade finance because we believe transparency, honesty, and ethics is the only way to do business. We are a member of Islamic Development Bank Group with more than 40 years of heritage, integrity, and success. We welcome new challenges and thrive in difficult times. We are determined to succeed where others would simply give up. Because we see opportunities where others see obstacles. We truly understand our clients' needs. We develop and diversify solutions to help them achieve their potential. And that's how we deliver real impact when it matters most. That's how we are making a difference. ITFC is advancing trade, improving lives. ITFC, member of Islamic Development Bank Group.
Give a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. So now, please join me in welcoming Engineer Hani Salim Sonbol, the CEO of ITFC, to deliver his opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Engineer Hani Salim Sonbol.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you again. It is really, as I said this morning, I feel very happy and very honored really to share with you the experience of ITFC and how ITFC is really became one of the most relevant institutions for trade finance and development. The story is long for those who have not joined us in the morning, and I welcome you all to this session, this very important session for ITFC. And I feel very proud really to represent the most, I would say, recently established organization, ITFC, which was established in 2008. However, the story is a long story, goes back to almost 40 years when the bank established a small, very small unit in the bank, really to deal with liquid management aspects, and then it developed to be a trade finance unit, and then a division, then became one day a department. And with the increase actually of the role of ITFC, or the role of trade in the development business, I am sure the time came when we felt that a specialized institution actually should be established to really add value, and also to consolidate all the trade activities under one umbrella of the IDB Group. Definitely IDB Group is a pioneer, as you can see, in trade finance, a time when no actually other institutions in the past has really had any interest really to deal with trade finance. And as you can see, today, after 40 years, almost all the MDBs, they have trade finance windows and trade finance programs. And also we feel very proud that we were actually part of establishing these programs with our sister organizations. Definitely, I'm also very honored to say that after almost 8 years now in the life of ITFC, alhamdulillah, is a very well-positioned corporations in member countries. We feel that we have been contributing to the development of member countries in one way or another. Without trade, the engine of growth will not really start and will not really move. So we feel very, very much happy to see that we were relevant. When we started the organizations in the beginning, we felt one of the most difficult questions that we have to really answer is actually to balance between our developmental role in the group to the commercial aspects of doing trade, because trade basically is a very purely commercial-oriented transactions. So this balance was very difficult. However, with the highly skilled teams that ITFC had, we were able actually to balance this kind of a formula where development as important as our major or main mandate of ITFC to the commercial aspects of the organization. Definitely this the whole story, as I said, started, and now we feel also after this 8 years we have accumulated almost $55 billion of trade finance and trade development activities in member countries. And I feel very proud that we are, from Suriname to Indonesia, we have covered all actually the member countries' needs, activities, whether it's in the public or in the private. I feel that we were very much relevant. Actually, we have proven, a very important point during the crisis. We have been through, at least recently, to 2 major crises. The one in 2008, which was started as a financial one and converted to be a very much an economic one later on. People felt that the trade flows were actually very much affected, and we felt that we have to turn the challenges into opportunities, and we did. Actually, ITFC during the first cycle of the crisis, we have been very, very relevant to member countries, and I can tell you that in numbers and figures that many of these countries, which most of the financial institutions were very hesitant actually to provide trade financing, we were there next to our member countries doing development, continuing really to support these countries going through transitions and difficult times. Now we see another type of a compounded, different type of a crisis that we are going through in the world. We can see now the world trade volumes are really, affected. In 2005 and 6, the growth of trade activities was around 7 to 8%. Now we are going to as low as 2.15% in 2015, and I think this is really a figure that we really have to be very much concerned with. However, we are very also determined to continue with this new cycle of financial issues and instability whether it is really the contraction in trade flows or actually the political aspects or what they call the China restructuring their economic growth and the appreciation of the US dollars and so on. But we do have to really convert all of these into business and try to stand by with actually the needs of our member countries. So we are really would like to be recognized in the future as more of the first Islamic organizations in providing what we call today the Trade Solutions Organization. We do want to meet all the needs. We customize really our solutions to fit your needs. We do not have a one product over the shelf. However, we want really to do this kind of a customization, and we were successful, especially when we are dealing with the structured trade finance transactions that we grew up from 600 million to today exceeding 2 to 3 billion years a year. So I think this is absolutely a good achievement. However, we will continue to work with our partners in the private sector to see what exactly they need and exactly what kind of products that we will develop. As you know, the Islamic products are quite many. However, we want to make sure that ITFC provides this kind of a solution for you. Indonesia is a big country, the biggest and the largest Muslim community country in the OIC organization, and we feel that we have a lot of potentials. That's why we have really said from the beginning we would like really to have an office that is really equipped with the high professional staff to serve you here in Indonesia. They have plans, they have strategies, and of course they need to hear from you today actually on what is exactly your need, so that we can really go on the right directions developing our coming 5 years strategy for Indonesia. I don't want to take much of the time. I have a great honor to have really an August speakers here with us today, and I thank them all for really coming and sharing with us their experiences. I would like really to learn from their knowledge also and see how we can convert whatever we have we're going to get today from this very important session into really actions and building our new future, inshallah, not only in Indonesia but in all of our member countries. Thank you very much again, and I would like to really welcome you again to this session. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Engineer Hani Salim Sonbol, the CEO ITFC. And now let's welcome Mr. Daud Vikri Abdullah. He is the President of International Center for Education in Islamic Finance, University Malaysia, to deliver his keynote presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Daud Vikri Abdullah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear brothers and sisters, you may have noticed I'm very tall, so I've removed the step. Hopefully I don't fall over when I step backwards. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a great honor to be here, and I'm eternally grateful for the opportunity to speak. I have about 10 minutes or so, and I have probably 20 slides, so it's going to be a very, very rapid tour. If you're interested in following later, then these slides will certainly be published, I think, through the ITFC, but they're also available on the INSIEF website as a download if you are interested. I have an agenda. I'm not going to read it out, but I really wanted to highlight a few points, and I want to keep it fairly light so that you don't get bombarded with statistics. But I wanted to look at some of the challenges, what needs to happen, the state of play, and some of the issues, and make a very, very brief conclusion. And I wanted to start off on the challenges for Islamic finance. And sometimes you need to go back to the future. I recall 11 years ago when I was appointed as the first managing director of a new Islamic bank in Malaysia. We did the launch of the bank, and I was asked a lot of the usual questions about what my 100-day plan was, how much money I was going to make, how many customers I was going to have. And then I got a question which was, what are the 3 biggest issues in Islamic finance today? And I answered, education, perception, and liquidity. And I still answer that question in the same way today. I'll be brief about this slide, but I wanted to focus your attention on these 3 issues. Education, creating awareness, educating in the right way, making sure that people really understand what Islamic finance is about and the value proposition that it brings is absolutely critical. Everyone in this room, I'm sure, will be aware of the misperceptions, not just about Islam, but also about Islamic finance. And that means we need to speak to different audiences listening in a different way. I recall about 12 months ago I presented in the United States at what was called a global conference on insurance. And I was the only speaker talking about THIQAH, and I didn't use a single word of Arabic apart from THIQAH. I talked about more similarities than differences between mutual insurance and THIQAH, and that seemed to go down quite well. But the idea of putting across messages to certain audiences in a way does create many, many misperceptions. Indeed, still the most frequently asked question I get after 25 years in this industry is, do I have to be a Muslim to participate in Islamic finance? And the answer, I'm sure you all know the answer to that, is no, you don't. Islamic finance is a gift for everyone. It's an opportunity for everyone. The final part of this triangle is liquidity, providing sufficient cross-border liquidity. But this is not just about liquidity instruments. Since we're talking about trade finance is a vital instrument for providing liquidity because it is generally short-term and it flows and it recycles and it is cross-border. I'm an economic historian not by training but by education, a long time ago, 45 years ago. And that education taught me a great deal about the spread of Islam, and the spread of Islam was based on trade. There is absolutely no reason today why the spread of Islamic finance cannot be based on trade finance. Trade is absolutely vital. What needs to happen? This is very high level, but clearly we need to educate, and that's why for the last 5 years I've dedicated my energies to the Global University of Islamic Finance based in Malaysia. Education is vital at all levels, at research levels, at primary school level, teaching values, ethical values, but also doing research which takes us into the next generation. And the second circle there is about creative disruption. Creative disruption, and by that I mean really creative disruption around fintech, about thinking outside of the box, through collaborations between different parts of the industry and different parts of industry which are not connected, will be absolutely vital for our future. Last week I attended the Global Islamic Financial Forum, and the governor of the Central Bank of Malaysia stated that probably in 2 or 3 years 30 to 40% of the audience in banking would not be in jobs in banking because of the creative disruption caused by fintech. And this is an area where our young people need to be educated about the opportunities, and we need to think outside of the box. Focus and clarity is absolutely essential. There must be a plan. I'm afraid I am old school. I am a dinosaur in some ways, as my children and grandchildren constantly remind me. But I'm a great believer in measuring what you have to manage. If you cannot put metrics to what you have to manage, it will not happen. So focus and clarity on those issues will be important. Now comes some graphs, and for which I apologize. I'm not going to spend much time, but you can see from this graph, global trade has historically grown faster than GDP during the most recent period since the 50s and 60s, which is good news for trade finance. The state of global trade as well shows that almost every country has become more open since the 1990s. Again, this is encouraging for Islamic finance and Islamic trade finance. The state of global trade also shows us that most of the emerging markets lead that trade growth. Again, that is very encouraging for the opportunities in Islamic finance, those countries which are in the OIC, but also those countries which have Muslim minorities and are increasingly engaged. I had the privilege 7 years ago of helping to set up the first Islamic financial institution in China, the Bank of Ningxia in Yinchan province. And that has snowballed and catapulted Islamic finance into a different dimension in China, which is incredibly populous in terms of Muslim population. But the development and the state of global trade is going to be vital in terms of inter-OIC trade and developing country trade. This is without doubt in my own mind. What is trade finance? I'm kind of reluctant to put up slides like this because you've all come to a trade finance presentation, an Islamic trade finance presentation, and the assumption, and sometimes assumptions you get wrong, is that all of you know some of the basic pillars. It's about financing, it's about payment, it's about risk mitigation, and it's about assimilation and cross-border assimilation of information. I'm not going to go into that in more detail, but this is an area where just a simple understanding of what Islamic finance, trade financing can do for you is absolutely imperative. What is Islamic trade finance? And this is a question that we often get asked in this industry, not just trade finance, but what's the difference with Islamic finance? I give a fundamental answer, and I'll do it two ways. One is primarily Islamic finance is about risk sharing. It is about the sharing of risk rather than the transfer of risk or indeed the shifting of risk to other people. It's everybody having some skin in the game and understanding what the risk share is. A few years ago, when I was a partner with Deloitte and I was responsible for Islamic finance globally, I had the opportunity to make what is called an elevator speech, as the Americans say, which gave me about 30 seconds to talk to the head of the Federal Reserve. And he asked me the question, and I won't do an American accent because it'll embarrass me and probably embarrass the Americans here. But he asked me, so what is this thing called Islamic finance? And I said, it is about the effective and efficient mobilization of capital for the benefit of the real economy. And he asked me the question, so what is the real economy? And I said, well, it's the economy you used to have before you had Big Bang, before deregulation. What you have now is a financial economy where instruments and derivative instruments are traded which actually add no economic value whatsoever. Islamic trade finance adds value because it's actually servicing trade, it's creating jobs, and it's creating economic value by things and physical assets being developed and being traded. That is the fundamental difference. And when you look at an economy like the United States, which is vast, it churns 10 times the volume of Islamic finance has in the world. If you compare 2 trillion with $25 trillion every year, the US capital market, less than 1% of the US capital market actually goes into the real economy. 99% goes into the financial economy. So, we have the state of intra-OIC trade. It's encouraging, although it is slowing down a little bit, and we need to look at how we can improve that, and that may be an issue of communication. The next slide also demonstrates where the current state of Islamic trade finance is, mainly focused on the energy sector, not surprisingly, but we need to look at other areas where it could develop. And I want to make a little bit of a stop here for 30 seconds on Sharia issues in Islamic finance. I don't want to discuss the 3 points that are up there, not because I don't want to, but there isn't time. But what I do need to recognize is that Sharia is an important aspect that we have, but not in terms of the legalese, but in terms of the objectives of Maqasid al-Sharia. And these can be resolved on the basis of substance over form, and organizations like the ITFC working with Sharia councils will help us. In conclusion, I want to remind you how important it is to educate, how important it is to think creatively and disrupt, not to be frightened of disrupting and change things. Be focused, demonstrate clarity, and as in all things in life, there is always much to do and not a moment to lose. Thank you, shukran, terima kasih banyak. Please take a look at our website if you want our presentation. The details are there. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Mr. Daud Vigor Abdullah. And Mr. Daud also will conduct as a moderator of this following section. So, joining Mr. Daud on stage are Engineer Halim Sombol, CEO ITFC. And gentlemen, with all due respect, please sit it next to your name title, so people will recognize very well. And also Mr. Emir Shah Shatar, Chairman of Matahari Mall Lipo Group and Vice Chairman Kadin Financial and Capital Market. And also Mr. Harry Hikmanto, Director of Bank Danamon's Islamic Window. And last but not least, Mr. Andy P.R. Abdurrahman, CEO and President Director of Bank Muamarat. So everyone is placed accordingly. Okay, thank you very much. The stage is yours, Mr. Daud. May you proceed.
Oh, hopefully this works. It does. I'm going to proceed. We're going to do things a little bit differently on this panel because we're going to get you to do some work. And apparently there are some polling or voting machines out there. Have you got voting machines? Yes? Not yet? Yes. Well, that's a relief. Okay. We're going to get you to answer some questions, and simply I think you have to push button either A, B, C or D, I didn't see the machine, or 1, 2 or 3 or 4 in answer to the question. So let us do a little test on the first question. Is the question coming up on a slide or do I have to read it out? Nobody answering, okay? Yes, it is. Okay. Except I can't see it here. Okay.
Everyone already has one?
Yeah. Okay.
Simply.
Right. You get 10 seconds to vote on this, and I'll read it. Do you feel that Islamic trade finance has grown in Indonesia? 1, you push yes, it's grown, push 1. If it's no, not growing, 2. And if you're not aware of anything, push 3. That's the don't know. So I think you've got 10 seconds to push your buttons. Please vote now.
Only one time. Sorry?
The screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Are we able to get this?
Already there. Already there.
Okay.
You can maybe stand up, sir.
Okay.
So you could.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. This is direct, instant results.
Instant poll. So the good news, panelists, is that 67% think it has grown. We were a little nervous that 100% would vote not aware. I'm joking, but we were nervous that they might say that. In which case. Our dear brother and the new CEO of ITFC would perhaps have a problem. No, not growing is about 20% and 13% are not aware. All of that tells a little bit of a story, but based on that, let's just ask, and maybe I can stand. Yes, let's do that. Let's take a look at it, and I'll try not to block the screen. I'll stay on the side. But what I would like to do is to get a first comment on that from the CEO of ITFC, Engineer Halim Sombol. What's your reaction to that poll? 67% say it's grown, 19% no, it's not growing, and 13% are not really aware.
I think this really reflects the actual situation, because now if you can look at the growth is almost 140% now of the financial industry, and I think this is a reflection of how people feel that the growth is really is there, and definitely we have other figures that with the overall industry is 42%, that was actually in the financial industry. These percentages reflect that growth. So we feel comfortable really with this kind of a poll that showing that people are realizing there is a growth actually in the financial. Particularly, of course, if you look at even in this morning's session with ICD, also the creation of the Islamic ijara and Islamic leasing companies and others are really part of this growth of the Islamic banking system in Indonesia.
Thank you for that. I'm now going to turn to the Indonesian participants, and I'll look at Emir Shah first. Now he's looking at me. I'm down here now. I go walkabout. I'll probably end up at the back of the audience watching this later. But what's your sense of this from an Indonesian perspective? Do these statistics surprise you from what is a reasonable cross-section here?
Well, I think... Can you hear me? Okay. Well, I think if you say growth, I would think so, because you're starting from a very low. Because bear in mind, I think what we have to think about is to dwell to the numbers later on, is basically what is actually the market share. Because as you know, the Sharia Islamic financing in Indonesia is not more than about 5% if you compare to the conventional. Which is a good news. Meaning that there's a lot of room to grow, and I guess I have to speak on behalf of Kadin also here. Kadin, on the 19th we are going to sign with IDB, in which it's basically, as you know, Kadin is the only so-called legal entity in terms of having this, all the companies in Indonesia. We have 24,000 companies members in all provinces. And one of it is, how to work closely with ICD and with ITFC and how to promote this. So I think this is quite a good news in terms of the room to grow. I think Brother Harry and Brother Andy will agree to me on this.
And right on cue, I'll turn to Harry first. Anything to add to those comments on these Indonesian figures?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, David. It is very true that coming from the practitioner, as a practitioners, what we're seeing is something that is really surprising, that in the last 2 years, the request, the understanding, the awareness, already there. But in terms of you also mentioned about the liquidity and the solutions is still on the progress. When we're signing the cooperation with ITFC last year, still a lot of questions coming from our internal management and from our major customer, whether this is something that can be done. But in fact, after running and assessing the market, the potential is very huge. Now the awareness and the request, the demand are really coming up. So hopefully we're quite optimistic and seeing this as a very true that the demand is growing, and also it's not just only a simple trade finance, but the concept behind the trade finance that you're saying, that the risk sharing, is very true. That because of this, can bring the trade finance growth in Indonesia to the next level.
Thank you. Pak Endi, a slightly different twist on the question is that I'm sure you'll probably agree with your two colleagues from this market, but what do you think needs to be done more of in order to create the awareness and build the momentum for Islamic trade finance here?
Yes, I think there are a lot of things need to be done. As you mentioned, Daud, I think this is about also not only the education, but also the knowledge and perception of the people about the trade finance. Now, if you look at the general banking knowledge and understanding, I think people do tend to go to the very basic standard banking facility, which is straightforward working capital. Now, I think they are still lacking in the market the specialist trade finance in the banking industry. We are talking about general conventional. So even then, the same problem still or challenge still remains in the Sharia banking industry, where there are still limited specialists in the trade. And this basically is becoming the real main challenge and hampering the growth of trade finance in the Islamic. I think this is an area we need to develop in the future.
Dr. Hammer, thank you. Dr. Hammer, just briefly, from a perspective as a standard setter, an accounting standard setter, What's your sense of the need for creating more education and awareness? Are you strongly in favour of it? I know you're engaged in that, but what's your take on the current situation and the next steps that would need to be taken here to improve the situation?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank ITFC for giving me the opportunity to participate in this really important session. As we mentioned, Dr. Dawood, that the industry itself believes 25 years ago, one of the key success factors for enhancing Islamic finance in general and Islamic trade finance is the standardization and harmonization. One of the most important facts that will support, even in Indonesia or all around the world, that supporting the standards. So because of that, the industry took the initiative to issue or to create a IUFI, to issue Sharia accounting, auditing, governance standards. And IUFI took that role, starting from that in 1991, to issue standard to help and support. For example, in Sharia, if you are focusing on Sharia first of all, IUFI issued a lot of standard related to trade finance. For example, Sharia standard related to LGs, to LCs. For example, also in terms of murabaha, there is really important parts in IUFI's Sharia standard related to murabaha, focusing on trade finance, how to use murabaha as a tool to financing, for example, LCs and this kind of trade financing. So this, first of all, enhancing the standardization, and second, issuing the standards is the first step. It's a really important step. But the next step is getting this standard implemented and recognized all around the world. So we are really proud with the strong relationship with the government and with the regulators here in Indonesia. They are really important part of issuing this IUFI standards. So we are also in talk with the regulators here in Indonesia and all around the world to get IUFI's standard more recognized in terms, at least as a guidelines, and second as a compulsory. And there is different countries all around the world took the initiative by getting IUFI standard as compulsory in their territory. And there is good impact on that. So the stability and also the harmonization has been created so that enhance the Islamic finance and also trade finance in particular.
Thank you, Dr. Hamad. Now, ladies and gentlemen, time to get your fingers on the buttons once again. We've got another question coming up, so I hope that we can... what is the trend globally here? Are you familiar with Islamic trade finance products? So you've got a choice of 4 again. Yes, I'm aware. No, I'm not aware. I'm somewhat aware, and I've never heard of it. So 1, 2, 3, or 4, 10 seconds starting now. Vote away, please. Okay, last second votes. See how quickly this system calculates. Right. 27%, just over 27% saying they are aware. Nearly 16% are not aware. The vast majority of you are somewhat aware, and nearly 10% of you have never heard of it. Okay, that's an interesting mix on that, and I'm going to again look at the CEO to see what your immediate reaction is to this. As we got several questions to speed through, I'm not going to go down the line, but I'm just going to get an immediate reaction from you. Clearly work to do.
No, definitely. I was expecting also this kind of a level of an awareness to exist, as you have just rightly said in your speech this morning, when you introduced the subject, that education is very important, and raising the awareness is also very important. Of course, we have seen now one of the challenges that the Islamic finance has is actually having really the professionals who can also come and work in commercial and in corporates and really to continue added to this sector. I was not surprised also because I can tell you maybe we are not doing enough actually to raise the awareness on this very important topic. We need to really develop a better communication strategies that we will, through that we can reach actually to the people and try to. However, that this does not really eliminate the fact that, as I said in my introductory speech, that Islamic finance has grown and grown by large percentages. Okay, has proven to be a very viable, financial system, used not by the, as you just say, conventional, but also in non-Muslim countries. We have seen testimonies after the financial crisis how effective is this Islamic finance is. So that's why I think we need to also enhance the education curriculums that we have seen now. Very reputable institutions that are really dealing with Islamic finance. However, we'd like to do more, and would like to really make this more aware.
Well, thank you for that, and I think it endorses what I was trying to say in my keynote, that education is key, but also there are a lot of misperceptions, and sadly people just sort of hear the I word, Islamic, and immediately switch off, but don't actually look further and look at the value proposition, and that's something we need to overcome. I'm going to get you to vote 3 times fairly quickly, and you'll understand this when I go. If we get to the next question, we're getting down to some specific products. Do you know the following products? So the first one is Murabaha. And those of you who are not familiar with these terms, I can tell you when I started Islamic finance 25 years ago, I had what I called the problem. And the problem was Murabaha, Musharaka, and Mudaraba. Now I know what they are, but at that time I couldn't pronounce them, let alone understand what they are. So for those of you, the first M is Murabaha. Do you know this product, yes or no? Okay. So 66% say yes, and 34% say no. Okay, I need to write this down because I might need to refer to it later. 66 and 34. We'll zoom into the next one, which is Mudaraba. Simple yes or no answer. Simple yes or no answer, please. Okay, slightly less familiar. 52 say yes and 48% say no. And we'll get to the final one, which is, of course, Musharaka. Are you familiar with Musharaka, yes or no? You're all feeling you get plenty of exercise, at least you're using your fingers to push buttons. Okay, and we slide down here where we have, on the third end, 47% and 53%. Okay, I'm going to ask Dr. Hamad Mera first on this, that based on what you just said, you clearly work to do. In which case, what work do we need to do?
First of all, I'm generally happy with the result. But yeah, we can look from 2 angles. First of all, I'm happy there is at least half of the audiences, they are familiar with all these 3 MMMs, as you say. But at the same time, as a practitioner, before I joined IUFI, the first difficulty in Islamic finance, one of the difficulties, as you mentioned in your speech, is awareness. First of all, with the practitioner in Islamic finance. The problem when a customer go to Islamic banks or Islamic institution branch, and he face an employee, and he said to him, look, by the end of the day, it's the same. So here the problem starting from here, if the employee in Islamic bank or Islamic institution doesn't know exactly what is the difference between Islamic finance in general as a theory, and then second, what is this financing or investment product, here the problem starting with. What about the public? What about the people in the community? So that means, first of all, we would like to start, as you mentioned, with the practitioner, with the people working in Islamic finance. And in IUFI, we found this gap, so we started 7 years ago with 2 professional certificates. First of all, with specific areas, one in accounting and the other one in Sharia. So starting from that, we found how important to enhance and to have training courses, not only professional certificates, training courses, and at the same time awareness sessions. At the same time, also in media, we are really in need to have specialized Islamic finance media, even in like newspapers, articles, and even some awareness programs. So I agree with as a conclusion, we are really in need to enhance in terms of training, education, and awareness.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm going to turn now to Engineer Hani Salam Sombo. It's not a response to this, although by all means respond, but it's more the question that there's a general perception that there's little innovation taking place in Islamic trade finance. Is that really the case, or is that just a misperception? What is your sense?
You see, this is one of the things I have said this morning. It's the thinking how to develop our Islamic finance products to meet the needs is a very important matter, and we really need to do that. Because today you can find it's not the lack actually of the Islamic products that can fit. It's how to really be able to use these products and develop them to meet the needs. Talking about murabaha, talking about the musharaka, and talking about mudaraba, each one of these can have its own, but there are many others. You have the leasing, the installment sale, even for the trade and services, you have the ju'ala, and many people may not know that there are others related to specific sectors. You know, you're talking about the agricultural sector, talking about the industrial sector. You know, today the istisna is one of those actually, products that really has proven, it is so effective in developing the industrial sector, for example. The others, which is of course, and by the way, these are all can be applicable to trade finance, could be applicable to other private sector, tools to develop the private sector and so on. So yes, we may want to stress more on the need actually to develop more and more. In ITFC, we have realized that since the beginning, honestly, most of the, before the creation of ITFC, most of the focus was actually on the murabaha aspects. And we realized that this is not going to be enough. So that's why for an institution to continue and succeed, we do have to be very innovative. You know, today's competition, today's world needs really this kind of innovation. Without innovation and without really having this kind of a thinking out of the box, sometimes it takes a lot of efforts to really come up with this kind of a innovative way. But we found that with persistence and with good really teams, skilled teams, that we can really come up with something that is very beneficial for our private sector and for the public sector. ITFC realized also that maybe if we don't do that, we'll be really out of the, we will not be positioned well. So we started to really focus on how to customize our trade solutions to meet the large companies, the medium-sized companies, the small companies, and all aspects. We meet also even the small farmers. I feel very proud that we have contributed to really supporting the farmers here in Indonesia, especially in the coffee sector. Okay, the groundnuts in Gambia and in Senegal. And these came out actually with what we call very innovative, structured trade, finance, products. And without that, we cannot really reach to these customers, because the first times you might face maybe an issue with the bank guaranteed. An institution cannot provide certain aspects of security packages. But you can always design and structure, your deals to take into consideration all the risk, and you can mitigate for all the risk factors that is involved in the deal. I would like to say that we also now are trying to innovate also our Islamic products into a different business models, where we are dealing with now international banks, and they found it, by the way, very, very useful, is to use these kind of products through their point of sales, through their branches, all over. So I think innovation is there. However, we need to do more. I feel very proud to say that the Islamic Development Bank has a very important sector, a very important center, which is called Islamic Products Development Center in IDB. And that is, of course, with also IRTI, which is the Islamic Research and Training Institute. Both are actually helping all of us, ICD, ITFC, ICIEC, and to really discover how we can really adapt the Islamic products tools to really meet our financing needs. So this is what I feel this is a very important topic, but I think because of time I should stop here. Thank you very much.
Okay, so innovation is happening, but let me come back and just get the feeling from our three Indonesian representatives here, not on the innovation but on the awareness side, and asking the question that is and apologies to all the Arabic speakers here, this is not meant to be provocative, or perhaps it is, but is the Arabic terminology of using musharaka, murabaha, mudaraba, ijara, is that a challenge, and is it easier to put across that murabaha is cost plus, or that musharaka is joint equity risk sharing? Is it the communication of what the contract is about? If we simplified that and put it into the local language, would that help? I'll take a look. Harry, perhaps you'd start us on that.
I think this is very relevant with our issues here, because in Indonesia, although we are majority Muslims, but what we found with Association of the Indonesian Sharia and Islamic Banks, that maybe the usage of a more understandable local language with the same meaning and understanding with the mudarabah, musyarakah, or murabaha will be more effective. That's one. And also, we together, banks and OJK, the Financial Service Authority, is very intensive to also promote this, because the awareness of, sometimes we were thinking that in certain products, especially trade finance, is really lack of socialization. You mentioned about the importance of this in our history, in Islam history, and also in the connection between the banks, the financial, and the real sector. So what we're doing today is still very limited from customer to customer, from targeted selected industries. But we are seeing that by collaborating, like, say, for example, with Indonesian Chamber of Commerce or ICC Banking Commission, that could help to promote this. But the important thing is for making the education this very effective, the usage of the local language and the innovation of the simple product. We don't need a complex product. Like the one that we're hopefully, inshallah, will be closed soon and booked soon with ITFC, is simple joint trade financing using murabaha contract. It's very simple, but we are leveraging the concept that you mentioned about the risk sharing, the concept about liquidity, how we pull and gather all the liquidities, cross-border liquidities into effective solution. So we don't have to be very complex. We can use local language with the same meaning of the Arabic, because maybe that's also some obstacle. And then let's see, this is could be the engine of growth.
Well, that's certainly very encouraging. Andy, if I could turn to you and your views on this, would that help simplify and create awareness if we just spoke in plain local language to explain the concepts?
Yes, I think this is somehow quite interesting when you talk about the perception and the people's understanding about all this language. Now, as you mentioned, this is quite a provocative, the statement that I'm going to make. Now, we are talking about the Islamic banking. Here we are talking about, sometimes people mixing about the religious aspects, the language aspects, and the cultural aspects. Now, I think this is the main challenge about Islamic banking. Now, here talk about murabaha, musyarakah, mudarabah, and all that. This is language, really. I think it's difficult to create a good perception when people don't understand the language. Now, you mentioned the educations, the perception, creating a good understanding about these products. I think this is the real challenge. I'm not saying that, we shouldn't use this global language of musyarakah, mudarabah, and all that. Same thing like in conventional. You're using the words of overdraft. It's a product known globally. But how we take this language to be easily understood by the local peoples, whether it's Indonesia, whether it's somewhere there in the world, people need to understand what is it for them. It's just not something that is so unfamiliar to their ear.
It's creating the awareness through understanding the concept, but more importantly, understanding the outcome, what is likely to happen. It's time to move on, or in the interest of time, because I want to allow time for questions, but I've got, I think, a couple more questions for your voting. So let's move on to the next question. How familiar are you with recent changes in the regulation in the area of financing in Indonesia and trade finance in particular? Yes, you're aware. 1, 2, not aware. 3, somewhat aware. 4, absolutely no idea. Okay, and results should be coming very soon. So nearly 15% are aware, close to 30% are not aware. We then have 42% somewhat aware, and 14% absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, okay, which is fine. Okay, so again, I think we have to take a look at our Indonesian representatives there. So close to 15% are aware, 30% not aware, under 3, the biggest, 42% are somewhat aware, and 14% are absolutely no idea. So I'm going to get Emir Shah to make a comment on that first. Are you shocked, surprised, or does that sort of fit a pattern that which you can relate to?
I think from the industry,